Welcome to the Unveiling Shadows podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Mosby. Join me as I dive into powerful stories of resilience and strength. In each episode, I sit down with guests who have faced similar journeys of coercive control, financial manipulation, and personal invasion. Together, we uncover the shadows, share our experiences, and inspire others to reclaim their lives. Tune in, listen, and be a part of the community that stands tall against the forces that seek to control us. On today's solo cast, I'm going to discuss understanding coercive control, silent manipulation, and tactics. But I'm going to go through this document by Richard Moore. It's called Triggering Tactics, Psychological Warfare, and the Modern Day Cops Program. This is for targeted individuals. So it says targeted individuals often experience a coordinated campaign of harassment involving sophisticated psychological triggers, a tactic known as triggering. These triggers are often referred to as anchoring, sensitization, conditioning. Pavlovian response techniques are designed to destabilize and sensitize the victim to specific stimuli, often resulting in long-term psychological harm. That sounds amazing. This type of harassment has a deep-rooted history tied to the origins of psychological operations, PSYOPs, and has been carried forward through various government programs to the present day, including the Department of Justice COPS, Community-Orientated Policing Services, and the National Sheriff's Association Neighborhood Watch. We've all heard of those with the stickers on the doors with the Neighborhood Watch guy and his magnifying glass. And then it says, this article explores the history of PSYOPs, the evolution of these tactics, and devastating impact of long-term exposure on victims, including the perversion of natural human responses through sexualized triggers. So many of UTIs can actually attest to the sexual stimulation, so that's quite embarrassing, but still happens nonetheless. Counterintelligence program. This is the historical origins of psychological operations. We're just going to say PSYOPs from now on. So Co-Intel Pro, initiated by the FBI in 1956, was designed to surveil, infiltrate, discredit, and disrupt domestic political organizations and civil rights movements deemed subversive by the U.S. government. The program targeted groups like the Black Panther Party, anti-war activists, and civil rights leaders such as Dr. Martin Luther King. Tactics include spreading rumors, investigating conflicts within organizations, and using local law enforcement as covert operatives. So then we can get into the MKULTRA program. It's a CIA-led project from the early 1950s to the late 1960s that focused on mind control and psychological manipulation through various experimental techniques. And we all know it didn't stop there, including the use of drugs, sensory deprivation, and psychological triggers to test how people could be controlled and destabilized. This program was exposed in the 1970s. If it was exposed, it never stopped in the 1960s, revealing the extent to which the government was willing to manipulate individuals. Psychological warfare tactics during the Cold War. Techniques such as disinformation, propaganda, and psychological destabilization were commonly used by intelligence agencies to break down enemies and influence public perception. These methods were honed and refined by both domestic and international use, laying the foundation for modern PSYOPs. Transitioning to modern programs, Operation Chaos, a CIA program launched in 1967 that aimed to surveil and infiltrate anti-Vietnam War movements within the U.S. Much like Co-Intel Pro, is used psychological harassment and disinformation campaigns to control and suppress dissident. The birth of community policing programs. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, the concept of community-orientated policing was born, aimed at interrogating police into the community to reduce crime. With the creation of the COPS program in 1994, these practices became more structured and eventually began to incorporate methods of psychological harassment under the guise of crime prevention. COPS, Community-Orientated Policing Service Program. The COPS program was established in 1994 by the U.S. Department of Justice under Violent
Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act. The program ostensibly aims to promote collaborative efforts between law enforcement and communities to combat crime. I mean, how much crime do you have in your neighborhood? However, the program has evolved into a covert surveillance and harassment operation that involves the use of citizen patrols, confidential informants, and community watch groups, many of which operate under the National Sheriff's Association Neighborhood Watch. Victims have reported these groups using systematic harassment, including the very same triggering tactics once used in Co-Intel Pro. National Sheriff's Association Neighborhood Watch, originally developed as a way to encourage citizens to report suspicious activity, Neighborhood Watch has now become intertwined with the COPS program. Why am I not surprised? Okay. Operatives are often advised by law enforcement on how to surveil, harass, and psychologically manipulate individuals deemed as threats to the community. Many of these groups now use the same targeting tactics, colors, noises, and behavioral cues to systematically harass and destroy targets. Gang stalking operations. This is number 5. After the attacks of 9/11, the U.S. Patrol Act granted unprecedented powers to law enforcement and intelligence agencies to surveil and target individuals under the banner of national security. Programs like Project Safe Neighborhoods, Project Clean Sweep, and the expansion of the COPS program enabled the agencies to partner with local law enforcement and civilian organizations to carry out coordinated harassment campaigns. Victims of these programs increased the use of digital surveillance, coordinating harassment by community groups or churches, I've had that, and heightened psychological targeting that includes triggers to destabilize them. Sexual triggers and the perversion of natural responses. One of the most insidious acts or aspects of this campaign is the deliberate use of sexual triggers to degrade and humiliate the victim. By conditioning the target to react to specific sexualized cues, the perpetrators aim to distort and pervert the victim's natural responses, causing deep psychological and emotional harm. This tactic is designed to destroy the target's sense of identity, self-esteem, and sexual health. Sexualized gestures and mimicry. Guitar playing, strumming a guitar or other rhythmic motions used as metaphors for masturbation, creating a connection between an innocent activity and a lewd act. Lip licking and suggestive touching. Perpetrators may touch themselves inappropriately in the target's line of sight to elicit disgust or discomfort. It is disgusting, but whatever. Gesturing sexual acts. Individuals will perform hand or body gestures symbolizing sexual acts to provoke the target. All right. Symbolic visual triggers. Phallic symbols, objects arranged to look like sexual organs, often placed in places that targets frequent. Sexual positions. Perpetrators may pose in an exaggerated position to mimic sexual acts as a form of visual harassment. Auditory triggers with sexual undertones. Sexualized noises, fake moaning, suggestive laughter, and sounds that mimic sexual activity played outside the target's home or in public places. Who are these people? This is so wrong on so many levels, literally. Songs with explicit lyrics. Playing music that references the target's personal life or explicit sexual contact to humiliate or arouse unwanted responses. Environmental manipulation. Sexual graffiti and pornographic images placed in areas where the target will see them, reinforcing the theme of degradation and the goal of total alienation. The overreaching objective of these campaigns is to not merely to harass, but to utterly destroy the victim. It is believed that millions of American citizens are currently being targeted and systematically dismantled by these programs. The ultimate goal is to, number 1, isolate the target, cut them off from family, friends, and any potential support networks, destroy their livelihood, prevent them from obtaining employment or secure housing, leaving them financially destitute, drive them to mental and physical breakdown, create a state of constant psychological and emotional turmoil that leads to severe health problems or even suicide. Number 4, erase their existence, make the target invisible to the broader community, leaving them discredited, marginalized, and forgotten. So, encouragement and strategies for victims. If you are a victim of this psychological warfare, know that you can rebuild your life by reconditioning your mind and regaining control over your responses. Like I've said in previous podcasts, I think awareness is like the number one thing. Like once you're aware that this sick and twisted programs are happening, it allows you to deal with it a lot better. Create new associations. Use visualization techniques to create positive associations with the triggers. If a color or sound is used against you, mentally reframe it as a symbol of strength or hope. Number 3, practice mindfulness and meditation. Focus on your breathing and remain present. Use mindfulness to disrupt the automatic response they want to create. 4, build a support network. Connect with other TIs, support groups, and communities like USA, GSA that understand your experience. Number 5, reclaim your power. Remember, every time you refuse to respond in the way that you want, you're taking control back, which I actually agree with that. A call for action for non-targets. He also lists some stuff. Here he says, if you're not a victim, your voice is crucial to speak out, spread awareness, and advocate for the rights of targeted individuals. Raise the issue with local and national elected officials and demand investigations into these community policing programs. Millions of Americans are suffering from these diabolical tactics, and it's time to shed light on these abuses. I agree with him. Richard Moore, you've done a great job highlighting and summarizing what happens when you're a target. Richard Moore and the United States Anti-Gang Stalking Association aim to raise the bar of national awareness on this appalling and unconscionable draconian program. The goal is to expose these injustices, support victims, and work towards dismantling the system that enables such targeted harassment. Join the cause, speak up, and help us put an end to the targeting destruction of innocent American lives. Like I said, a lot of people are targets, and a lot of people are fearful for what's going to happen, the repercussions of standing up and speaking out. But I think the more people that are aware and speak out against it, the better we are able to stop it. So stay strong, and you've got this.
Thank you for listening to the Unveiling Shadows podcast. I hope today's episode has shed light on the experiences that too often remain hidden. If you or someone you know has a story to share, please reach out to me. Remember, you're not alone and your voice matters. Follow me on social media and subscribe to the podcast for more inspiring stories. Until next time, stay strong and keep unveiling the shadows.